All right, let's have a look at problem 819. Josh is just starting a round of golf. This first hole is 130 yards long. He needs to decide which club to use for his first shot. He has kept careful records about how close his first shots came to the hole, all from the same distance. His records include data from his use of 2 different golf clubs, a wedge and an 8-iron, over the past year. So part A tells us to create a histogram and box plot for each of the clubs. Place the box plot above the histogram on the same number line for each club to make a combination plot. Use a bin width of 5 yards. So our first step should be taking these numbers and putting them in order from least to greatest. So we're going to do that separately for the wedge as well as the 8-iron. I've already done that. And you can see here, I'm going to color code anything having to do with the wedge is going to be in blue, and the 8-iron is going to be in green. So I've got my scores in order from, or I guess not scores, but distances in order from least to greatest. That's our first step. And then once we have that, we want to set up our histograms. So we need one for the wedge and one for the 8-iron. Now it told us to go by a bin width of 5, which just means we're going by 5s down here. So we go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, all the way up to 30. Now neither of the distances go past 30, so 30 is a fine number to stop at. And then I just went by ones on the frequency end. So what we want to do is we are going to count for our wedge histogram. We want to count, all right, how many scores do we have that range from 0 to 4? It looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is going to be in the next range. So I'm going to draw my first bar is going to go from, it's going to go all the way up to 5, and then I can shade that in. My next range of scores goes from 4 to 9, and it looks like I have 2 that go from 4 to 9. So I'm going to make my next bar go up to 2, and I can shade in. My next range goes from 10 to 14. So I only have 1 there. Ooh, actually, no, 10 to 14. So I have 0 for the next one. So this whole 10 to 14 range is going to be 0. Now my next score was 15, and we had 1 of those. So 1 distance, I guess I keep calling them scores, but 1 distance that ranges between 15 and 19. All right, and then our next range goes from 20 to 24. We have 1 of those. So we're going to draw a line up to 1 and shade in. And then finally, our last range is going to go from 25 to 29, and we have 1 of those. So this is what our histogram for the wedge should look like. Now we can go ahead and take a look at our numbers for the 8-iron. So I'm going to switch over to green here. In our 8-iron, again, we're going by the same scale for distance. So 0 to 4 is going to be our first range of numbers, and it looks like we have 1 of those. So I'm going to go down to my histogram. For this first range here, I have 1, so I'll shade that in. Next is going to be a range of 5 to 9. So it looks like I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. So I'm going to draw a bar that goes up to 4, and then I can shade in. Let me clean that top up there a little bit. Okay. My next range goes from 10 to 14, so let's see how many of those we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so my next bar is going to go all the way up to 7. Shade that in. I'm going to clean this up here just a little bit. I don't know how that happened. All right. Our next range of distances goes from 15 to 19. We have 1 there. So go up to 1, shade that in. And then our last one, our last range of distances goes from 20 to 24. We have 1 of those. So we're going to go up to 1, draw that in. So now we're finished with our histograms. I will say they should be labeled, so distance is going to be the x-axis, and the y-axis is going to be frequency. I don't think I can fit the whole word in, but frequency is going to be the y-axis. All right, now what we need to do is we need to, it tells us to create a histogram above our box plots to make a combination plot. So I'll do it for my wedge first. Now remember, with a histogram, the lines for it are going to range from the lowest number to the highest. It doesn't matter how far up or down we start, but it does matter horizontally where we start and stop our line. So I'm going to start right about here. And the lowest with the wedge was 0. The highest was 25. So I'm going to start at 0, and I'm going to extend all the way to 25. One a little bit over here, so fix that. All right, so that's how far our line is going to go for our box plot. We do need to find the median, quartile 1 and quartile 3. I will tell you those are 4, 2, and 15. If you're not sure how to find these, email one of us and we would be happy to help you. So I'm going to plot the median on my line. It's going to be at 4, so it's going to be not quite 2, 5. My quartile 1 is 2, so it's going to be down on this end. And then my quartile 3 is at 15, so it's going to be all the way up here. Those 3 lines are going to make up my box on the box plot. And then for the 8 iron, we have a median of 10.5, a quartile, a first quartile of 8, and a third quartile of 12. So again, our lowest distance on the 8 iron was 3. It's going to be right about here. The highest was 20, so it's going to range from 3 to 20. Our median was 10.5, so we are going to put a mark at approximately 10.5. Quartile 1 was 8, so that's going to be right about here. And quartile 3 was at 12, so that's going to be slightly past 10. All right, so this is the box plot for the 8 iron. That's all we need to do for part A. Now part B, it says to find the typical distance that Josh hits the ball from the hole with a wedge, is the mean or median a better choice? Find the typical distance Josh hits the ball from the hole with a wedge and compare it to the typical distance he hits the ball with an 8 iron. So in this case, if we are looking at our data on both histograms, we would say that the data is not symmetric. So in this case, we would want to use the median. So we are going to say median, and again, this is part B, so we're going to say median because the data is not symmetric. All right, and then remember the wedge median. So we're going to say, we'll specify here the wedge median. That was 4 in the 8 iron. Median was 10.5. So we could say on average, again, this is just on average, Josh hits the ball 6.5 yards closer with the wedge. And again, we're taking the difference between our two medians. So we're getting that number by taking our median of the 8 iron, median of the wedge, and finding the difference, which is that 6.5. So that's where we are getting that number from. And you can see also by looking at the wedge data and the histogram that if we look at these numbers here, they are a lot lower overall than the numbers for the 8 iron. Remember, lower in this case is good because that means that it is a closer distance to the hole in golf. All right, let's have a look at part C for this question. So for this one, it says, advise Josh which club to use and explain your thinking. All right, so we can see that we know after part B that the wedge tends to get the ball closer to the hole. But we also, if we look at our 8 iron, actually not at our histogram, if we look at our box plot, okay, and we compare, a tighter box on our box plot is going to be more consistency. So, generally in golf, we do want to use a club that gets the ball closer to the hole, but we have to keep in mind that consistency is also important. So, it really just depends in this case. So, we could say, well, the wedge should get the ball closer to the hole. However, the 8 iron has more consistency. And consistency just means, the more we do something, it's going to have results that are similar each time that we do something. All right, and that is all for problem 819.